Welcome to another top 3 videos, folks. I would ask you to please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider hitting that join button to become a channel member. We're not paid anything to give you guys these top 3 game lists, and I've been doing this channel for over a decade, so I really want it to start paying off. You can make that happen by becoming a channel member and also getting some monthly game codes for doing that. Thanks again. Let's get started with the video. Well, hello there, folks, and welcome to another top 3 list of fantastic games. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at the top 3 World War II turn-based games. But quite frankly, this could just as easily be a top 5 list or even a top 10 list. And the one we're looking at today is Strategic Command World War II, War in Europe. As you can see, there are a tremendous amount of starting positions all the way from the 1939 beginning of the war going through the entire campaign. Of course, you can play as East or I should say you can play as Axis or Allies, and that includes both the Eastern and Western fronts. And again, you could do an entire campaign, or you could go for something a little more, a little shorter. In this case, the Fall Vice campaign, aka the invasion of Poland. Again, you can play as both sides, and you can start in virtually any period of the war. Over here, the other thing I really enjoy is the ability to choose between 3D units and NATO counters. It's completely up to you. You can turn on the Fog of War, where you will not be able to see the enemies until your men spot them, and I would recommend that. You can turn on weather. You can even turn on retreats and even the borders of certain areas. So I really like this one. It's got naval combat. It's got land combat. Let's take a look at what it looks like. But overall, I really would say that War in Europe is just absolutely fantastic. All right, guys. Well, today we decided to just take a look at Fall Vice right here. If you guys saw, there is a message that popped up beforehand. There's one thing I really like about this particular turn-based game is it sort of has, I don't want to say it's story-based because it's not, but it does a good job at detailing the historical narrative going along what you're doing in the game. It also gives you historically based options. So for instance, you might get an option, and this is totally subjective here, but you might get an option something like, hey, historically, these men wound up on this particular front. Would you like to spend some victory points and send them to this other front instead? So it really lets you kind of play out history from a different perspective, but it gives you that necessary historical narrative to not only learn from what you're doing and the moves you're making, but to get a sort of, again, a narrative-based historical approach to what's going on and how your decisions are affecting the war. And I really, really like that. I think that there are some games out there that do this even better. However, I'm not quite sure that they would be classified as entirely turn-based games. One of the ones I can think of right out the bat, and I'm sure some of you will be like, Agrippa, why did you put that in the list? It's because I don't consider it a turn-based game, really. I think it's a little more than that, and that would be Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa. And in Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa, not only are you focusing on, the historical narrative and following up on, the historical playthrough of a certain war, but you can actually take an ethical or moral approach to the war. So approach it in, a way you probably couldn't in 99% of other games. For instance, are you going to burn this village down? Yeah, I know, it gets pretty intense. But again, the Strategic Command series, it's never let me down. It's quite detailed, and let me be clear, it's not just World War II where this game or this series does a great job. No, they do a great job on all modern wars, World War I, World War II, even the wars before, like the Balkan Wars, which you can get in some of their other games. I mean, this is one of those companies that absolutely goes out of their way to offer the most detailed historical games out there, and I really like them for it, and I think it's why they have such a large fan base. So that's Strategic Command. And again, just to be clear, we are playing just the Fall Vice campaign. If we were playing the Grand campaign, this would be a whole lot larger. And yes, you can get a pretty incredible view of everything around us. But again, this is just Fall Vice. You could do the entire war if that's what you feel like. Now let's jump to number 2. The next one on the list, Panzer Core. Believe it or not, this is actually a remake of a much older game. The original Panzer Core is something I used to play as a kid, and I still remember the theme song. I'm not going to say it here because I'm going to sound like a total nerd instead of mostly a nerd. But again, this one, I think, in terms of campaigns, it's got a tremendous amount of different campaigns, from Africa Core to the 1939 early Blitzkrieg to Soviet Core. Now, let me be clear. The Soviet Core that I'm looking at, as well as the Africa Core, these are DLC. So you do need to actually get the DLC. But I just want to show you guys, like, look at the amount of scenarios here that you can play. I mean, it's crazy. Everything from Operation Sea Lion, which actually never took place, to Operation Overlord, of course, D-Day, totally up to you. So it's just like completely up to you. There's many different kinds, of course, of gameplay styles here. You can play as Germans, or you can get the other DLC and play as the Allies, or even the Soviets, of course. Well, they're still allies. But today we're going to take a look at the Germans here, and I just want to jump into Operation Barbarossa. As you can see here, of course, there are difficulty settings. Just like the previous game, we've got pretty straightforward fog of war settings and even supply settings. And once again, you can play as both sides. Now, if you want to do something a little more advanced than just a game, you could stick with a campaign. So do the early Blitzkrieg campaign, or the 1943 Western Front campaign, or the 1943 Eastern Front campaign, etc. I'm actually going to do that just to show you guys the difference here. And I love this voice acting.
Union has begun. From the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, our forces are on the march against the Bolshevik. High Command has taken extraordinary measures to ensure complete secrecy for our invasion, and intelligence seems to confirm that our surprise is complete. You should encounter little Soviet resistance on your initial drive eastward, but expect resistance to grow as you cover more ground. Your core forces have been designated Army Group Center, and your ultimate objective for the first phase of the invasion is the city of Smolensk. Make no mistake, this invasion will be the largest the world has seen, and this enemy will be more numerous than any previous. Do not underestimate the Red Bear, Herr General, or it will be both our heads.
And again, the game is very clear with, of course, the difficulty one is going to be facing. Of course, you have all of the units of the time period, if that makes sense, and the same turn-based system here. I think the thing that makes it a little different than the other ones is that, you know, again, very, very nice back and forth between the troops. Supply can be an issue, but you don't have to make it an issue. You could just make this a very generic turn-based game, which, you know, might sound like a weakness, but I don't think it always is. You know, sometimes people just want sort of a simpler beer and pretzels approach to their turn-based games, and Panzer Core can often fill that void. You can see here also where you're attacking from makes a big difference. Since we were attacking from a river tile and this is not an amphibious troop, that Soviet unit actually did a tremendous amount of damage to us. You can be ambushed by the enemy like we just were there, and just like Strategic Command, everything from naval infantry to air warfare is relevant and, of course, factors in to the overall gameplay. I still can't get over the sound of that Stuka dive bomber. It sounds better every damn time. Now, I may be a bit of a sap for the classics, but I would definitely consider this one a classic and something I love, man. And again, it might not be like a huge deal to most, but it's like once you take a town and your forces move in, the flag of the town changes to your flag. I know that should be standard, but for some reason, it just feels really good in Panzer Core. And I should mention that both this and Strategic Command can both be multiplayer games. You could play this with friends. So if anybody has any arguments about how a World War II battle would have gone if this happened or that happened, Panzer Core is a great way to resolve that particular argument. Now, I bet you weren't expecting this one, and it's actually the newest of the games we've been playing, and it's known as The Troop. The thing about The Troop is this is a turn-based game, but quite frankly, it could almost be a real-time game or considered a real-time game too in terms of just how beautiful it is. It's damn pretty, let's just be clear, and I really enjoyed playing it. There is a story mission. There's also a skirmish mission, which you can play with different forces, assuming you want to, for instance, tackle the mission as Axis or allies. That allows you to do that. There's also a campaign mode, which allows you to start from D-Day and grow with a persistent force. And over here, there are also battle groups. A dynamic operation fought with a randomized persistent force. You have a battle group name, you randomize just sort of your battle group, and you have to see how you can do with it. But where I think this one really stands out is the story mode. It's just really cool. And it sort of reminds me of that movie, Saving Private Ryan. There's just so many instances where so many things are happening at once, and you need to sort of determine what's going to happen. And I don't know, it just sort of reminds me of, it gives you that sense of a story, of like an actual story going on around you. Now, the one downside I would say is, if I'm not mistaken, it's primarily British and Canadian forces against German forces. And it is, of course, exclusively Western Front oriented. But man, it just puts you in that mood of wanting to defeat the enemy, and the enemy feels tangible here. Like, they actually feel like a real threat that you need to destroy, and if you don't, then your men are going to be, maybe not treated very well, let's put it that way, if they don't win the battle. Even in a mission called Mutual Respect, believe it or not. See, once again, in comparison to the others, it's quite pretty, and again, it's very much focused in a specific area, so you can actually zoom in and see your men. I'm not saying you can't do that in the other ones, but I think the other ones are on much larger scale, whereas this one is not. It's on a smaller scale, but nonetheless, it makes sense. Now, we're just going to begin the battle. Typically, we would actually set up. But here, I just want you guys to see how our units are going to react to the enemy. And again, it feels almost real time, right? But it's not. It's not real time. It is absolutely a turn-based game. And as you can see, the Germans are getting closer and closer to us, guys. We're going to have to do something to stop them. This is very much the feeling you get in the game. And, you can actually see, unlike the other two, you can see when a guy goes down in a squad, his body's going to remain there. He's going to serve as a permanent reminder to his friends just what can happen if they get too close. Now, again, I'm really trying to just get into an engagement as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I'd be a little more strategic about this. But my goal right now, like I said, is just to get into a fight quickly. The other thing about this one, so it's a little bit different, as you can see, in terms of the sight lines, etc., but it's still turn-based. So, for instance, we're going to fire on this Stug tank. I'm not expecting us to get a hit because it is the frontal armor. Is that a Stug? Yeah, it is. It's the frontal armor, so I doubt we'll actually get a penetrating hit, but we're going to fire either way. And look at that. It's actually going to get a close-up view of the shot. And I think that's something that's lacking in the other two. So that's what to me that adds to that sort of like beautiful element I was telling you guys before. And again, we'll try to aim with this gun too. I think we might be able to aim at this tank. 47% chance of a hit. Why not? Let's go for it. Oh, baby. And that one was a hit, as you can see. And like I told you, you can actually see the guys down. 2 were killed inside the tank, killed or wounded. And while he does still look operational, this Panzer IV, he's definitely hurt, and the crew is dazed. And there's only 2 crew in there, of course, to react to us. Of course, we've got our own tanks, which we can advance with. Unlike the other 2, there's not a naval or an air war component. That might be kind of a strike against this one, but for what it does with the land war component, with just the infantry and the armor, I think it sort of offsets the other 2 anyway, at least when it comes to that. It's just a beautiful damn game. What else can I say? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed these 3. I would ask, just like my other videos, for you to please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And consider becoming a channel member. You can really, really help me out if you make that happen. I dedicate a tremendous amount of time to this channel. I dedicate a tremendous amount of money to getting these games. We don't get all these games for free. And I've been doing this for over 10 years, you know. I really want this to start paying off, and for it not to have just been 10 years of my life entirely wasted, because I care about this community, and I care about where your money goes, and it's not going into my pocket. I can promise you that. You know, these companies are making cash off these games. I'm not getting any payoffs to do these videos, so I really rely on the community to help me out. Well, there's my spiel. I hope you'll take it for what it is. And I hope you enjoy these top 3 videos. If you have any suggestions, as always, let me know in the comments below. I love to hear your guys' thoughts, and quite often I learn about new games myself. So, see you on the next one, folks. Take care, and have a great one.